What is going on, ballers? It's your boy MJ coming at you with another episode of the Fantasy Fumble. I'm here with my co-host Joe the Birdman. Joe, how the hell you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great, Manny. I made the playoffs in 6 out of 8 leagues, and I locked in a bye for 2 of them. So I'm pumped. I barely squeaked by, as I was discussing in our group chat today. I barely, by the skin of my teeth, got in 3 leagues. 0.5 points in 2 leagues and 2 points in 1 league. That's how close. I mean, all of my leagues were very, very close this year, much closer than past years. So it was very exciting. I definitely thought I was losing going into the night game, and that was a horrible night game on both sides of the football. So I got lucky. But yeah, I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
Doing great, man. I didn't do that many leagues this year. I am in the playoffs, 4th seed in both of them. So I feel pretty good. Strong season. My team's starting to click. This is a tough week. First week of the playoffs, right? There's not a lot of good matchups, right? There's a lot of, if you have some of the top tier guys, they're unfortunately going up against some of the top tier, defenses and matchups. So we'll get into obviously specifics on how to go about that. But first, we want to let you guys know this is going to be our last episode for the season. We're season-long fantasy guys. We're not DFS guys, as we talked about here. And, at the end of the day, we don't have a lot more information to give you. So hopefully we got you to the playoffs, guys. We appreciate the support. Next year is going to be a bigger year. But before we get into news and notes, a word from our sponsors.
Hey there, my name is Manny James Gonzalez with PRB, and I'm a real estate agent here in Central Florida. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, military relocation pro, and big supporter of 2A and veterans' rights. My specialty is VA transactions. I'm also experienced in all parts of real estate.
I've been living in Florida for over 20 years, and I can tell you we still believe in freedom down here. One of the greatest job markets, excellent economy, and no state income tax. When it comes to an agent, you want one that's going to be honest, not afraid of a fight, and most importantly, willing to do the things that some agents aren't willing to do.
And what's that, Manny?
Shoot straight, Dan. If you're ever considering buying in Central Florida, you need somebody you can trust, and I got your 6. I'm Manny James Gonzalez, find land for the free and home for the brave.
Welcome back, ballers. Let's get into some news and notes. Well, we're in week 15 into the playoffs, but unfortunately, the injury apocalypse has reared its ugly head again. And this time, we've got a few guys you need to keep your eye on, but there are a couple that are out for the season. Starting with Daniel Jones with a torn Achilles. And right now, backup quarterback Anthony Richardson is still on IR, and backup quarterback Riley Leonard is dealing with a knee injury. So the Colts signed Phillip Rivers to the team this week. He hasn't played football since 2020, so that could get interesting. Washington Commanders tight end Zach Ertz suffered a torn ACL, and he's out for the season, of course. He was doing really well this year. We're pretty high on him here at Sports Minds, so that was a disappointment to see him. And the Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins, he is going through the concussion protocol again. This is the second concussion in 3 weeks. So it's possible they sit him for a few games or possibly the rest of the season. Keep an eye on that. If you've got him, make plans to adjust. Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb is also in the concussion protocol. They say he's going through it well, but this is the NFL. You never know what to expect. He might not play this week. Falcons wide receiver Drake London, his status is still up in the air for week 15. And Steelers wide receiver DK Metcalf, who had an amazing game, could miss some practice due to stomach pain, but he should be fine for week 15. And Dolphins running back Devon Achane, he had a bruised rib. He underwent an MRI, and everything appears to be fine. It didn't show any serious issues, so he should be good to go. But But again, just keep an eye on that and grab Jalen Wright if you don't have him as a backup already.
Welcome back, ballers. So now me and Joe, we're trying to switch things up. Obviously, last episode, primarily we're just trying to give you some playoff tips, playoff strategies for the rest of the year. This is the point where people, obviously it's tense, right? You're a one and done now. You either win or you're knocked out. So one of the things that I like to look at is, playing the matchups, right? For example, I have one league, I have CJ Stroud and Drake May. Drake May has been a top 5 fantasy quarterback all year, but he's playing against the Buffalo Bills. And then CJ Stroud is, of course, playing against the Arizona Cardinals. As much as I think, Drake May is a much better quarterback, like all around in a much better situation, I'm still going to play CJ Stroud just because I feel like, it's an easier matchup. It's more likely that, a team like the Texans are trying to establish themselves, whereas the Patriots are trying to keep that bye. So I feel like they're not going to take a lot of risks. So if you're looking for winning that matchup, I think obviously, the higher upside is with CJ Stroud. How about you? Any tips for these guys?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to, as you just said, look at the matchups. And me personally, it's something I do towards the end of the season. If I have a winning record and I'm anticipating the playoffs, I'll grab 2 defenses because this is a time of year where you're going to deal with tough matchups and you can't settle for maybe 5 points. And you're looking for someone that's going to have a really good matchup. So I'm rostering 2 defenses in every league and just kind of going with the matchups for the next 3 weeks, just taking a look at which is the better one to play that week. So you should have enough room on your roster to have an additional defense because it's getting to be that time where you can't just plug in your defense and hope for the best. You actually know which teams are bad and which teams are good and who's going to have the higher upside, even if they're not a great team. So I would just suggest rostering 2 defenses.
Great strategies. Hopefully they adopt it here. At the end of the day, you got to go with what you know, right? Like you got to go with those that feeling you have, that gut feeling, right?
Absolutely. Definitely trust your gut, man.
Now, before further ado, let's go ahead and get into the hot matchups.
Now, for my hot matchup, I have God damn it. Hold on. I just lost my notes. Okay. Now, for my hot matchup, I have the Bills versus the Patriots. There's a lot on the line for this game. The Patriots have won 10 games in a row and are nice and rested after the bye week. And the Bills have been great the last 2 weeks. They're 9-4, and they still have a slim chance of winning the AFC East if they can pull off a win this week. If they don't, their chances are pretty much done. But Drake May is averaging 20 points a game. He's been rock solid all season. He's a must start, but this matchup, as you mentioned earlier, will be more difficult against a tough Bills pass defense. And Drake tends to spread the ball around, which limits the upside of his pass catchers even more. In addition to having a tough matchup, he does spread the ball around. But I do anticipate a high-scoring game. That's why it's my hot matchup. We know he likes to run the ball as well, but he hasn't been as successful in recent weeks. But I feel like he's going to run a little bit more this game, again, just because the Patriots are not going to be as successful with the Bills against the pass. Hopefully he does have more success on the ground this week because for the last month, he hasn't been as reliable as he was towards the beginning of the season. And as I mentioned, the receivers are going to have their hands full against the Bills. But Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte, they could be flex plays if you don't have a better option. Hopefully you do. You're in the playoffs. You probably should. But if this game does turn into a shootout, which I anticipate, they should have a safe floor. But it's also possible that the Patriots just lean on the run game. And that's why I'm focused a little bit more on the running opposed to the passing for this game. And despite the Patriots going back to a running back committee, I really like Travion Henderson this week. The Bills are weak against the run, and even if Ramondre takes some carries away from Travion, I anticipate a big day for him. And for the same reasons, I actually think Ramondre will have a safe floor this week too. One thing though, I would not start Hunter Henry. I know he's been good, but the Bills have been shutting down tight ends the entire season, and that's probably going to happen to Hunter Henry. And on the other side of the ball, the Bills are a very similar team to the Patriots, and Josh Allen is a lot like Drake May. He likes to use his legs. He likes to spread the ball around, and you don't know who's going to be catching the ball each week. With that said, this is my hot matchup because I anticipate a high-scoring game. So I know he's been pretty bad over the last month, but I think there will be enough scoring to start Khalil Shakir, the typical boom bust. I know he's been mostly a bust over the last month, but I do like him this week. And I actually think that Dalton Kincaid will have a big day as well. And, you know, I prefer him over any of the wide receivers, really. So I like him a lot. And the main difference with these two teams is the Patriots are monsters against the run. But you start James Cook every single week without thinking twice. A high-scoring game and plenty of volume gives him a high floor regardless of the matchup.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you covered it really well. Now, for my hot matchup, I have Detroit versus LA Rams. I think this is the second or third time that Jared Goff and Matt Stafford meet up again since they've been traded by their respective teams. You know, obviously, LA Rams, which were the St. Louis Rams, right? They ended up drafting Jared Goff and vice versa, right? The Lions drafted Matt Stafford. They traded them for each other, and they've both been super successful. Starting off on the Detroit side of the ball, Goff so far is 289 for 412 in passing attempts and completions. He has 3,334 pass yards and 26 touchdowns. So he's been super solid this year, as he has every other year since he's been over there. The big one to highlight here, if you have him, Jahmyr Gibbs has been on an absolute tear. He's already over 1,000 yards rushing. He's actually averaging 5.7 yards a carry, which is amazing, right? Like you're seeing, he touches the ball, he's gone. I mean, he already has 13 touchdowns. And so far, he has 66 targets and 187 carries. So when you look at that, 13 games, he's actually averaging 19.4 touches a game. So Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to win your matchup, right? I'll talk more about him a little bit later. Next guy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? He's already he's almost at 1,000. He has 976 receiving yards for the season, but 81 receptions on 117 targets. That means he's averaging 9 targets per game. And that's obviously with a slower start to the season, right? Things are going to definitely pick up here come playoff time because, I mean, at the end of the day, Lions like to pour on points. Now, on the LA Rams side, there's so many people to talk about. But I'll talk about the main ones. Matt Stafford. I mean, he has been QB5 all year long, right? Fantasy football. He has thrown for 288 completions on 432 attempts, 3354. So he's actually like only 20 more yards than Jared Goff. However, he has 35 passing touchdowns. So 35 to Goff's 26. So he's about nine touchdowns more. So I think that obviously it's going to be another multi-touchdown game for Matt Stafford because, I mean, you can't talk about Stafford without talking about Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, right? Puka Nacua already has 118 targets for 93 receptions. He's already almost at 1,200 receiving yards. He's at 1,186. Granted, he only has 6 touchdowns, but he's actually averaging 9.8 targets per game, which is ridiculous, right? And you think with that many targets, there's not enough to go around, but beg to differ. Devontae Adams already has 14 touchdowns for the season. Granted, it's only on 56 receptions, but he has 718 yards. So when he is getting the ball, he's making something happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then if you're looking for a nice flex, I know Kyron Williams has been putting up RB2 numbers, pretty consistently. But now with Blake Corum coming on, I mean, those two guys are going to be, if you are debating on who to start, honestly, you can start them both and live with the results, right? Because you're going to get about 15 to 20 a game on each guy.
I feel like for that situation, I would definitely start Kyron over Blake Corum just because he's been so consistent all year. No, don't get me wrong. Blake Corum looked awesome and he has been getting more reps, but if you're going to choose between those two, I'd definitely go Kyron, but that's a valid point. If you got a double flex league, you could probably flex them both and be okay. Those teams, they both have really good defenses, but the offense for both of them is just ridiculous. I didn't realize Puka had that many targets. So yeah, man, he's probably going to finish at the tippy top of the food chain with targets this year and receiving yards altogether. But yeah, I feel like despite both of those guys both of those teams having really solid defense, the offense is just going to overwhelm them both. And I like that game a lot. I think that's probably going to be the most exciting game this week.
It's going to be the one I tune into. If I could pick one game, it's definitely that one. Not the Eagles. Fuck the Eagles.
Well, that brings me into our cold matchup.
So nipply in here.
Ooh. So for my cold matchup, I have the Raiders versus the Eagles. Now, when we talk about hot and cold matchups, it's always related to fantasy football, not just the game as a whole. So I feel like you guys know that, but just a reminder. So when you look at this on paper, it looks like a smash, right? The Eagles have a record of 8-5, and the Raiders have a record of 2-11. With that said, I don't believe it's going to be like a total blowout. I think the Eagles are going to win, but I don't think they're necessarily going to dominate. And if you look at this on paper, you'd think the Eagles are just going to run through them, but they haven't put up a substantial amount of points for the last 6 weeks. It's hard to say which wide receiver will get the looks between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith each week, although the last 3 weeks it's been all A.J. So, I'd probably lean that direction, and I'm going to start both of them without really thinking too much about it. But again, it's just like with the way Hurts has been playing, their ceiling isn't as high as it typically would be. And Saquon Barkley looked awesome last week, but has been mostly a disappointment this season compared to what we were expecting. And Dallas Goedert started out really hot, but completely fell off until last week. Again, that's a tight end position. You're not going to think about it too much. You probably play him. But just with this overall offense, I just would lower the ceiling. And even against the Raiders, it's just what we've seen from the Eagles. And if you look at them, aside from the game against Dallas, Hurts hasn't really done much in the last 6 weeks. He's had one game with over 20 points and the rest have been below. And I just don't know what to do with his offense anymore, which sucks because I have a lot of Eagles on my fantasy teams. But again, I'm going to start all those guys I mentioned just with lower expectations. And the Raiders have been exactly what we expected coming into this season. Thankfully, Ashton Genty is heavily involved in the passing game because he hasn't been able to do much with his carries. He's only passed 100 rushing yards once back in week 4 against Bears. And most games he has around 50, give or take, rushing yards. So you hope he gets bailed out with receptions or a touchdown. And Brock Bowers is the only other player worth starting. A tight end averaging 15 points a game is great, but it's still well below our expectations coming into season. And even if the Eagles do dominate and they're winning by 2 scores, I imagine they're just going to kind of grind out the game rather than turn it on like you would see the Detroit Lions do.
And I agree with you. Even despite the fact that the Eagles need to turn it on, they're not going to, right? I mean, right now, speaking of Ashton Genty, I mean, most people would think to bench him the first round of the playoffs, and I was one of those people. But when I saw the matchup against the Eagles, we're like 26 against the run. So if anything, we're gonna sputter. We're gonna have some issues, and the Raiders are gonna play us tough. And tough means running the ball, right? So I expect Ashton Genty to be the only person that would start. And luckily, my rule of thumb for fantasy football is almost never draft somebody from your favorite team, right? Because it takes a little bit of bias and puts it into the equation. And so, if I had any shares of the Eagles this year, I would be pissed off.
I'm pissed off. I've managed to get to the playoffs in most leagues, but
not with their help.
Not with much help from them, no.
Now, for my cold matchup, I'm going to take two teams that are at the bottom of the division for the NFC East. That's going to be the Washington Foreskins going against the New York Midgets. They play in New York, so it's going to be cold. Both teams, Jackson Dart's been pretty solid, but outside of that, I'm not starting Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary. I'm not starting any of those wide receivers with the exception of Wan'Dale Robinson. He's been the only consistent light, him and Jackson Dart. On that side, on the Washington side, there's nobody that you would want to start. Terry McLaurin's been out all season. Jaden Daniels is probably out for the rest of the season now, right? Because he got hurt again. So I wouldn't risk my future but with the lost season. And then it's a backfield committee, right? So, at the end of the day, there's, not really but one or two viable options on both teams that I would be happy with. So, I just think it's going to be a grind fest. You're going to see a bunch of no names probably score here and there. But at the end of the day, it's going to be probably the ugliest game of the week, and I want no part of it.
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying about that game. You really don't know what to expect from these teams that are basically just throwing the towel. So I am going to start Jackson Dart in one league, but I have Jaden Daniels in two leagues, and he's staying on my bench. Debo is going to be started in one league as a double flex, but like you said, they're going to be giving some other guys playing time, and none of these guys are reliable starters. Now let's get into our shit calls. So this is actually going to be our shit call of the year to wrap things up. And my shit call of the year is don't listen to all of the quote unquote experts and the rankings and the projections. Now, I have done that too many times this year where I trust the projections or I trust the experts. And even us, if you guys feel like you've got a gut feeling that one player is going to be better than what we're saying, then go with your gut. That's my main takeaway this year is trust your gut, because there were so many times where I was going to play one guy and then I looked at the projections and I listened to what the experts were saying and I changed my mind. And a perfect example is last week. I really liked the matchup for DK Metcalf, but I heard all these experts saying Adonai Mitchell's the guy to start this week. They had him ranked way higher than DK. So in 3 leagues, I played Adonai Mitchell over DK Metcalf, and it cost me the game because DK went off for 130 yards, and Adonai Mitchell had 1 catch. So if you have a gut feeling, trust your gut, not the experts.
Now, for my shit call of the year, so I had to think about it, and I was looking back at it. My biggest regret this year, I would say, was I'd say it was 2 things. So number one, I actually, if you guys remember from the first episode preseason rankings, I actually had Josh Jacobs at number 4 and JT Jonathan Taylor at number 5. So I'd say that's one of my biggest shit calls is putting Josh Jacobs one step before JT, because JT obviously has had the much better season and I had him almost on the same tier. But I guess my other big one is I traded for Joe Mixon in all my leagues. I thought that he was going to get back from injury, around weeks 10 or something like that. I was like, hey, I'll get him late, but I'll get him for the playoffs. Unfortunately, when you have a player that has not had an update since the off season and with no clarity, you never go for that player, right? So I think we've seen it before in the past with different players, right? I think Brandon Ayuk was having some issues, right? There's different
example, yeah.
there's different players that you have no information on it and no experts can give you information. And then you're just taking it as, hey, this is a late round sleeper. It's going to be a good pick. If you were grabbing Joe Mixon, you grabbed them in the 8th or 9th round. That was a waste of pick, right? I didn't draft him, but I did trade for him. And I remember one of my packages included Jahmyr Gibbs, and I got Mixon and Derrick Henry back. And as you could tell, I completely lost that trade. So word of advice from now, from now until the end of time, do not take risks on players that have no updates or information.
That's very, very valuable advice. And you can look throughout the season of players that were just out for weeks at a time, like Ricky Pearsall. We were getting no updates on his knee injury. He was just out. So when you're not getting a substantial timeline or any kind of updates, I completely agree. Just steer clear of that player.
Yeah, move on. I mean, Bucky Irvin, right? Like, we thought he was out for a couple of weeks. He ended up being out for like 6-7 weeks.
Yep.
There's a bunch of players like that. So, go with the gut. Obviously, you're not going to drop Bucky, but, other players you're going to move on from.
I mean, Bucky turned out great, but we had to wait about a month longer than we thought.
Yes, sir. Well, ballers, it's that time we hate, and this is the worst time. It's the last episode of the year. We appreciate all of your support, guys. I know we joke around, we talk a lot of shit. But really, this is our 3rd year doing this, and we appreciate all of the support, guys. We're going to come back next year better than ever, right? Because every year we get better. But we can't do that without you guys. So please make sure to like, share, leave a comment. I know in the off season we kind of go gray. You're not going to see us for a while, but just know we're going to be back ready to go next year with some, valuable advice.
Yeah, and we really do appreciate all the support. And you'll notice, like, when we post shorts or we do segments just on hot matchups and trade targets and things like that, we never start the video with, hey guys, like, subscribe. We don't like to ask for likes and subscribes, but if you feel like we're giving you valuable information, it does help. Like, subscribe, just give us feedback. We've been pretty solid. I don't mind telling you, we've been very solid the last few years, and we are getting better every year. So if you like the content we're putting out, please do us a favor and subscribe to the channel. We're not going to bother you in the off season.
All right, ballers. Well, we're going to see you again here, same time, same place next year in the off season. We'll get you guys started. Don't forget to tell your mother, tell your grandmother, tell anybody that watches football to follow us. And at the end of the day, guys, like I said, we appreciate you. And when we see you here next year, same time, same place, guys, take care.